Camille. Camille, are you here first? Wow. 2,000 Pine Points for Camille. Yeah, I saw that, Mike. Hugh Ross. I think it's superstition hiding behind science. But yeah, Mike Winter, I saw that there was a live stream, and I think they were talking about this similar topic. I actually think there's a mole in my administration. There's a spy within the PineCreek administration giving the Unbelievable channel material, because I've been thinking of doing this for a couple of days, and somehow they got word of it, and they beat me to the punch by a few hours. That's life. You know, it's I put all the safeguards I can on my systems, but somehow these Christians seem to sneak in. How's that for a conspiracy theory? Hugh Ross is an interesting guy. Let's get right into it and see what he has to say.
This talk is based on an experience I had. It was an international debate community, and it was all full video, so I was seeing these skeptics from around the world. And it was a scientist in Ireland who said, okay, how do you use science to establish that there must be a God? But I want to see if you can use science alone to go from deism to theism and theism to Christianity.
Okay, so right off the bat, I think Hugh Ross has missed a step. He's saying, how do you go from deism to theism, from theism to Christianity? But he forgot about atheism in there. How do you go from atheism to deism and so forth? But this is the purpose of this whole video that he's going to do here. And let me bring up, because this is very important, I'm going to bring up his words, except I've added from atheism to deism, from deism to theism, and from theism to Christianity. How do you do these things using science alone? He said the word alone there. And so that's the purpose of this video. And I'm very curious to see how he's going to do it.
How do you establish that it's Jesus Christ as the creator God of the Bible? And so I told her, well, there's 3 ways it can be done that I can think of, and I'm going to give you one of those 3 ways this morning.
Okay, so he's going to give me one of the 3 ways. There's, I guess, another 2. Maybe they're more persuasive, but we will see. So I'm going to fast forward it to 222. I'll put the links in the description later.
For the universe. Now, personally, I started reading in cosmology when I was 7 years of age. In fact, the first book I read in cosmology was a book by Fred Hoyle, Nature of the Universe. And it's interesting reading that book because he had 2 chapters where he poured out venom against the Christian faith. He clearly did not like Christianity. And I don't know why he put that in his book. Why is that in the book? But it kind of shows you that he must have had some bitter experiences with Christians.
Showing sort of a bias against Christianity, presuppositions against maybe the supernatural.
During his growing up years. But this is what he said in Nature of the Universe. He says, there's a good deal of cosmology in the Bible. It is a remarkable conception. I read that at age 7, didn't really look at the Bible till I was 17. But I remember at age 17 saying, Hoyle is right. There's a lot of cosmology in the Bible. In fact, there's more than 10 times as much about cosmology in the Bible as there is in all the rest of the holy books of the religions of the world combined.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's true. It could be true. There's more talk about cosmology than in the Bible, 10 times more than the rest of the religious books combined. But the reason why I agree with him is because there's been a lot of models, cosmological models, taken from the Bible. And I want to present some here. The first one is this one. And I bring this up not to be facetious at all, but these are real models of the universe taken from the Bible. A lot of flat earthers, they didn't make this up themselves. They just didn't pull this out of the ether. A lot of them are Christians. A lot of them are at least theists and believe in the Bible or other holy texts. And, God made the firmament, divide the waters. So you see the firmament above on that globe shape. And he spread out the sky as molten-looking glass, Job 37:18. And the stars in the heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casts their untimely figs, Revelation 6:13. He set the earth on its foundations, so it'll never be moved. So the flat earthers, they have some scriptural basis for what they believe. What's another model here? Yeah, let me show you this one. I like this one better. So here's the ancient Hebrew conception of the universe. So this is the cosmology found in the Bible, according to Hugh Ross. Not according to Hugh Ross, but waters above the firmament, the sky, windows and doors in heaven. There's scriptural references for all these. And then you got the moon, clouds. You have Sheol, that underground place. I don't know, that's maybe where the goblins live. Then you have foundations of the earth. You see how the foundations are on each side of that semicircle firmament, and then foundations below the Sheol, and then the great deep. A lot of flat earthers believe this because if reality is actually this, if this is true, I think I would have to become a theist. I think I would have to believe in God. Because that's really amazing. And I think a lot of flat earthers say that if you take Hugh Ross's view of the universe, what is it, 70% dark energy and 20-some% dark matter, which basically you can't live in, and only 4% of our universe is what we know as protons, electrons, neutrons, atoms. And then of that 4%, 0.0001% or something is habitable life. Like, what? We're not special then. How can we be special if that's the truth? So this is special. What you're looking on your at your screen now, that's special. And so this is why a lot of flat earthers believe what they believe.
If you're not familiar with that term, cosmology refers to the origin and history of the universe. Now, I have found that no matter where I speak in the world, everybody knows one verse of the Bible. It's not John 3:16, it's Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But it's not the only verse in the Bible that speaks about a singularity beginning. Now that's a physics term, which means an actual beginning of...
What? Where? Genesis 1:1 has the word singularity in it? Now, hang on.
But it's not the only verse in the Bible that speaks about a singularity beginning.
The Bible speaks of a singularity beginning?
That's a physics term which means an actual beginning of matter, energy, space, and time.
Hang on, I'm not a physicist, but does a singularity mean an actual beginning of these things? I don't think so. I think a singularity is when a sphere gets so small that, well, basically that the radius of that sphere is zero. And so it's this theoretical view of something we can't explain. And that singularity is in the middle of some black hole, and then it has like a, what do they call it? Some type of horizon that you can't get outside of it unless you're going faster than the speed of light or something like this. Like, this is, to me, pulling out or putting in science terms into Genesis 1:1. I think even Christians can see he's doing this.
And these are a few.
But so far, using science alone, how do you go from atheism to deism, deism to theism, and from theism to Christianity? He hasn't even begun yet.
The passages in the Bible that speak about that space-time beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I remember as a young man going through the Bible trying to find where the Old Testament talked about the universe. You will not find the word universe anywhere in the Old Testament.
And you won't find the word singularity in it either.
There is no word in biblical Hebrew for universe, but they have this phrase, L'Shamayan Ares, heaven.
Okay, remember, he said this is the purpose of the video, is using science alone, not the Bible. Otherwise, why would he say the word alone? Using science alone, how do you go from atheism to deism? That's the first step. And now he's bringing up verses.
And earth, and where it has the definite articles attached, it means the totality of physical reality. And it shows up 9 times in the Old Testament, always referring to the totality of physical reality. And when it uses the word create, in Genesis 1:1 it's the word bara, to bring something brand new into existence that never existed before. So right there in the first sentence is a claim that there's a being that brought into existence the totality of matter, energy, space, and time.
Yeah, and using science alone, so far you have said nothing.
In the New Testament, Hebrews 11:3 says that the universe that we can detect did not come from that which we can detect. And what can we humans detect? Matter, energy, space, and time.
Oh, okay, yeah, I looked up Hebrews 11:3. It says, by faith, excuse me, by faith we understand that the world was created by the word of God, so that was seen was made out of things which do not appear. So Genesis 1:1, Hugh Ross was saying that in the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth, and he kind of made it sound like out of nothing. What's the philosophical ex nihilo, the philosophical term? But Hebrews 11:3 says God made what is seen out of things. One more time. Out of things which do not appear. Is things nothing? Is Hebrews 11:3 contradicting Genesis 1:1? Of course not. I just don't understand these things.
Now, I was reading the Bible at age 17 for the first time, which happened to be that also the time when physicists in Britain and South Africa were developing the first of the space-time theorems. And now we have over 30 of those theorems. Probably the one that's having the greatest significance is this one. I got it right here if you want to take a look at it, where it says inflationary space-times are not past incomplete, known as the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem. And hey, if you want to read something that's really fascinating, I encourage you to get this. You can get it at Physical Review Letters. It's just incredible reading, especially if you love tensor calculus. You won't be able to put this thing down. But it does end with a conclusion we can all understand, which is the following. Any universe that expands on average throughout its history has a space-time beginning, implying a causal agent outside space and time who creates space-time, matter, and energy.
Is that true what he just said?
History has a space-time beginning.
Sorry, I got to rewind that.
With a conclusion we can all understand, which is the following. Any universe that expands on average throughout its history has a space-time beginning, implying a causal agent outside space and time who creates space-time, matter, and energy.
Okay, I seem to remember a physicist named Sean Carroll talking about this with a guy, what's his famous, William Lane Craig. You guys remember that debate? Now, William Lane Craig has never lost, William Lane Craig has never lost the debate. But William Lane Craig, this is the one debate he had where his margin of victory was very, very slim. It was very, very slim. And I'm going to play a clip of that. Now remember, Hugh Ross is talking about Board, Vilenkin, and Guth, and saying, well, this theory says there had to be a beginning and it must have a causal agent. And this, I believe I have queued up properly to what Sean Carroll says.
And I would really like Dr. Craig to explain to us why this universe is not okay. Now, you might think that, there's a theorem by Alan Guth and Arvind Borde and Alex Vilenkin that says the universe had a beginning. I've explained to you why that's not true, but in case you don't trust me, I happen to have Alan Guth right here, one of the authors of the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem. Alan, what do you say? He says, I don't know whether the universe had a beginning.
Oh, the guy who authored, one-third of the guys who authored this theorem, this paper, says, I don't know if the universe had a beginning, which is in my opinion, the intellectually honest answer. Now, it's very faint, you can't see it, but
I suspect the universe didn't have a beginning.
He suspects the universe didn't have a beginning. He's holding a little iPad or something showing his own words.
It's very likely eternal, but nobody knows. Now,
very likely eternal, but nobody knows, not even Hugh Ross.
How in the world can the author of the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem say the universe is probably eternal for the reasons I've already told you? The theorem is only about classical descriptions of the universe, not about the universe itself.
So William Lane Craig still won this debate, but it was very, very slim margins. Back to Hugh Ross.
Now, the significance of this is the non-biblical gods claim that God creates inside space and time. That's what you'll see.
Oh, I just remembered, I have another clip. Speaking of William Lane Craig, let me bring up. Now, I found this gem just a few months ago, or maybe 1 month ago, of William Lane Craig talking about universes being created, and he said this.
Of the world. And what scientists tell us is that if the world is hung up in a kind of unstable quantum position, the entire universe could undergo a quantum transition to a lower energy level. And if it does, in the blink of an eye, this would spread across the universe at the speed of, faster than the speed of light, transforming the entire universe, resulting in a new set of laws and a new universe. Resulting in a new set of laws and a new universe.
What caused this new universe, Dr. Craig? Another universe. He just said this. So when Hugh Ross says, oh, this theorem shows that the universe had a beginning and it had to have a causal agent, well, maybe this causal agent is another universe. And maybe it didn't have a beginning.
See in the Eastern religions. Unique to the Bible is a claim that God creates independent of space and time. Space and time don't exist until God creates the universe. Now, Alexander Vilenkin, one of the three authors of the space-time theorem, made the point in a later book. About a year and a half later, he wrote this. He said, with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Now, he didn't really address what that problem was, but I think it's clear. Proof of a space-time beginning implies that there must be a causal agent beyond space and time who creates our universe of space, time, matter, and energy.
No. We just heard from Sean Carroll. And which guy was it? Was it, I forget, was it Guth or Board who was speaking earlier? He said, no, that doesn't have to be the case. We just heard from William Lane Craig, said, nope, that doesn't have to be a case. A universe could be formed in a blink of an eye from a different universe.
In other words, a transcendent God must exist. And this actually you can see.
A transcendent God must exist. See, this is the difference between a guy like Hugh Ross and myself. I don't pretend to know things I don't know. And Hugh Ross is pretending to know something he doesn't know. And I don't think that's intellectually honest. I really don't. Now, I'm the first to admit Hugh Ross could be right. Maybe a deity of some sort did cause everything. I'm not omniscient. I don't know that. But I wonder if Hugh Ross is intellectually honest with himself to say that maybe no gods were involved at all.
In the latest books being published by atheist astronomers and physicists, they're conceding that they can't take deism off the scientific table.
Are you willing to concede, Dr. Hugh Ross, that you're not taking atheism off the table? Are you willing to say that?
Because of the force of these space-time theorems. That was kind of the basis of that scientist in Ireland. She says, I can see from your writings how you get deism. Now tell me how you can get from deism to theism to Christianity using science alone. I don't want to...
Okay, so far, what we've listened to, he has not used science to show how you can go from atheism to deism. He's basically using some type of argument from ignorance or incredulity that, hey, I can't imagine any other causal agent other than a God, so therefore there has to be a God. But I just played a clip from William Lane Craig saying, hey, a universe can cause another universe, so maybe our universe was caused by another universe. I played a clip from William Lane Craig, Sean Carroll saying something similar, that a universe or universes, cosmos, could be eternal, going past. So we don't know if it had a beginning. We don't know. We just don't know.
I want to hear from the Bible, she said. But as I mentioned, I'm going to give you a little bit of Bible so you can see how to integrate the Bible and the science.
So yeah, I think he's saying I'm giving you Bible because most of the people in the room are Christian, but he wouldn't give all these verses to an atheist scientist, I guess.
So a transcendent God must exist, but is this God personal, and did he design the universe and earth for the existence, and as we'll see later, for the redemption of billions of human beings? Now, as much as the Bible says about the beginning of the universe, it actually says much more about the expansion of the universe. You won't find it in Genesis, you won't find it in the Torah, but it does actually show up in the oldest book of the Bible. The oldest book of the Bible is not Genesis, it's Job. Content of Job predates that of Genesis by at least 400 years. And in Job 9:8 it says, God alone stretches out the heavens. That's typically how the English translations put it, the stretching out of the heavens. The Hebrew verb there is the verb natah, which means the expansion of what's being described.
Now remember, I put this up on purpose, using science alone. How do you go not only from atheism to deism, which he hasn't shown, but how do you go from deism to theism and from theism to Christianity? And he's already jumped to at least some form of Judaism here by quoting, these are all Old Testament scriptures.
And as you look at these 11 texts, it shows up in all three Hebrew verb forms, the perfect, the imperfect, as well as the cal participle form, which means these are actually talking about the expansion of the universe. Many years ago, I debated the executive director of the Skeptic Society on a university campus, Michael Shermer, and he claimed that these passages were just pure metaphors, figures of speech.
So Shermer claimed that these passages were metaphor. Okay.
When you actually see that the verb is in all three Hebrew verb forms, it literally is telling us that the universe is continually expanding at the hand of...
Did you guys catch that? Let me rewind it.
When you actually see that the verb is in all three Hebrew verb forms, it literally is telling us...
It literally is telling us...
that the universe is continually expanding at the hand of God.
Okay, he used the word literally. Look at the first one there. I know it's small, but Job 9:8. I actually looked that up and got a few verses in front of Job 9:8. So this is Job 9:6-8. Now remember, Hugh Ross is quoting Job 9, verse 8, and he used the word literally to describe the stretching of the heavens, that this means the expanding of our universe. But this is verse 6. Who shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble. Are the earth's pillars trembling? Is that literally true, Dr. Hugh Ross? Who commands the sun, and it does rise, who seals up the stars. Is it literally true, Dr. Hugh Ross, that the sun rises and that stars are sealed? Kind of sounds more like those other cosmological models I brought up earlier. Who alone stretched out the heavens and trampled the waves of the sea. So Hugh Ross is choosing verse 8 and saying this is literally talking about the expansion of our universe, who alone stretched out the heavens and trampled the waves of the sea. But I don't think for 1 second Hugh Ross would say that the earth literally has pillars that tremble, or that the sun literally rises above the horizon, or that the stars are literally sealed. But he chooses that last verse as literally describing something. But again, so far, Hugh Ross has not used any science alone to go from atheism to deism, deism to theism, and from theism to Christianity.
Now, I think the reason why Shermer was disturbed by this is that no one even thought about an expanding universe outside of Bible scholars until the 20th century. And actually you can see Jewish scholars 800 years ago, 900 years ago, looking at their Bibles and saying it's talking about an expanding universe, but no scientist drew that conclusion until the 20th century.
So he's making a claim here that some Jewish people, hundreds of years before scientists, knew that our universe was expanding, literally. That's a pretty bold claim. I wish we had time machines. We could figure all this out to see what... I have a feeling if we had a time machine, we went back and talked to those people, they might have this view of cosmology similar to the flat earthers.
So this is evidence that the Bible has predictive power, that was able to predict a feature of the universe that scientists hadn't discovered until the 20th century.
I know a lot of people hate hypotheticals, but if Hugh Ross was here with me right now, I would ask him this. If it were true, if it were true that our universe wasn't expanding, would he now view these verses that he has on the screen as not literal, but figurative, and agree with Michael Shermer? Oh, my guess is he would. If it were true that our universe wasn't expanding away from itself, he would take these same verses and say, no, Doug, these are metaphors. This is figurative. But because I think there's something prior to science in his life that he has to make the Bible fit to what he sees now in retrospect.
Now, I've written a whole book, The Creator and the Cosmos, that lays out the best...
Okay, I don't want to watch the whole thing. I'm going to skip to 1458.
And the Bible got it right.
Oh yeah, during that time, he actually says the Bible is predicting this decay curve. Oh.
Now, where we get the personality of the Creator is that it's...
So he thinks he's already established that there's a Creator. and and that this creator is in theism. I mean, not just a deistic God, but again, he's used nothing but scripture at this point, and he's supposed to be using science alone. And now he's going to try to go from theism to Christianity.
Discovery that the expansion of the universe must be fine-tuned to a very high degree to get life, and especially to get human beings. And today we know what the dominant factor is that governs the expansion of the universe. It's something called dark energy. How many of you here have ever heard of dark energy? Okay, almost all of you. I'm impressed. It wasn't discovered until 1999. Wow, this has gotten good news. But one reason why you probably have heard of it, astronomers now know that it makes up a little more than 70% of all the stuff of the universe. Dark energy is a dominant component of the universe. And dark energy, the best way to describe it is it's the energy embedded in the space surface of the universe. And so you can think of the universe like planet Earth. Planet Earth is a three-dimensional body, and we humans live on the two-dimensional surface of the three-dimensional Earth. The universe is 4 dimensions, and all the stars and galaxies and all the space-time dimensions are on the three-dimensional surface of the 4-dimensional universe. But as that surface expands, dark energy becomes progressively more powerful in its capacity to accelerate the expansion of the universe. So, for example, for the last 7 billion years, the universe has been expanding at a more and more rapid rate. This being 2019, the universe will expand more rapidly than it did in 2018. Now, a question that I often...
So he's basically talking about the fine-tuning argument and saying this is the reason why God has to be a personal God. I do think the fine-tuning argument out of all the arguments for theism is the best one, but it's still an argument from ignorance. But it's still an amazing thought that, hey, wow, if things were just a little bit different, we wouldn't be here. But one thing I love to point out is if any random spot in our universe, if you were to just appear in that spot, what's the probability that you would exist, that you could live? And that's very, very low. And so you could say that the fine-tuning argument really doesn't do a good job to say that it's been fine-tuned, that the universe has been fine-tuned for life. But I think Hugh Ross's point is we need this dark energy to expand in order to have planets form and suns form and so forth to allow us to have formed.
Get is how much of the expansion of my waistline can I blame on dark energy? Well, it's less than a quadrillionth of an inch per year. Anything beyond that has got another cause. Okay. But here's the principle. If you expand the universe too rapidly from the cosmic creation event, gravity will not be able to collect any of the cosmic gas to make galaxies, stars, and planets. And life will have no place to live. And life will have no possibility of originating. On the other hand, if you expand the universe too slowly from the cosmic creation event, gravity will collect all that gas and compress it into nothing but black holes and neutron stars, where the density exceeds 2 billion tons per level teaspoonful, at density so extreme, molecules are impossible, atoms are impossible, even protons and electrons are impossible.
Okay, so he's basically just going to go on and on about how fine-tuned the universe is. My argument for that is, look, if this is an argument for your God, for theism, and specifically Christianity, are you saying that God couldn't have done it any other way? That dark matter would have to be what it is and exhibit these forces to expand the universe the way it did? That God is limited to the physical constants of the universe? Hugh Ross, is that what you're saying? Because I think a lot of Christians, I actually do think that's how you would answer it and say, yeah, my God is more a naturalistic God. I don't know if you would say that, but I think a lot of Christians would have big problems with saying that their omnipotent God, their all-powerful God, is limited by mere physical constants of our universe, and that he could easily have done it a different way. Now, if a Christian says that God could have changed the physical constant and still had life, then the fine-tuning argument goes right down the tubes, because it's no longer an argument for this deity, that it had to be, all the dials had to be set a certain way, and if they weren't set a certain way, we couldn't have life. But the Christians say, no, you can set the dials any way you want, because my God's all-powerful, and he could still have made it work. And so I think that's the strongest argument against the fine-tuning argument. The couple examples of that I've heard people use is, the puddle analogy. If you have a puddle of a certain shape, certain size, certain depth, that puddle would look at what it's in and say, oh, wow, if this shape was just a little bit different, if the depth was just a little bit different, this puddle as we know it wouldn't exist. You'd be a different puddle, right? Another example is, the dart analogy. You throw a dart against the wall and it sticks, and then later, after the dart's already there, you walk up towards it and you draw the bullseye and the target around it and say, wow, that dart just happened to be right in the middle. If that dart would have been a little bit to the right, no life. A little bit to the left, no life. But it happened to be right in the middle. But this is sort of post hoc reasoning, right? We exist, we're alive, and we can, and I do agree, it's amazing that we're here. But this is why, well, not why, but some people say that, well, if we have 1 trillion universes, and each one has different constants and so forth, you're bound to get a universe where you'll find life in it. But I do see the Christian's point that, well, this is just a faith statement. You're just believing this on faith, that there's multiple universes. Well, touche. And this is why some atheists say Christians just believe on faith that a God did it. But I think Hugh Ross, what he does is he uses science, he uses terms and equations to give confidence to his followers that he's smart and that he believes these things, like a man rising from the dead, for very good reasons. And I think he's actually a very superstitious man. And I think he actually is not that good of a critical thinker. And I want to show you some evidence of that. So I found a video. This is Truth Revelation, Demons and the Occult. If I were a betting man, and I am, I think when he was in his teens, when Hugh Ross was in his teens, that he had some type of personal experience that has to do with the occult or demons, or maybe he just had existential angst. I don't know. But my bet is that something like that happened to him. I've heard his personal testimony many times, and he doesn't mention this. So this is just conjecture on my part. But Christians do that with me, like, oh, Doug, you're an atheist because some personal event. This is has to do with emotions, not reason. So if Christians can do it to me, that's fair for me to do it to guys like Hugh Ross, right? So here's Hugh Ross talking about the occult.
As an astronomer, I can tell you 99%.
Oh, actually, this is about UFOs. Sorry.
Of what people report as UFOs are not real UFOs. They have a natural explanation, or it's a hoax, or it's some secret military.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jay Carey, and thank you to. Oh yeah, Jay Carey. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the donation.
Aircraft or device that's responsible for the UFO encounters. Sometimes it's an optical illusion. I've seen a number of photos I refer to as a chandelier.
So to his credit, Hugh Ross says that 99% of UFO reports are fake.
Effect, where people are photographing this cluster of UFOs on the horizon. I said, well, were you inside a building taking that photograph with a window in front of you? And they say, yeah, why do you ask? Behind you is reflecting off the window, making you think you've got all these UFOs out on the horizon.
That's
and
funny.
If you move around, it actually makes the light.
Good point, Lucifer. UFOs could be anything. It's just an unidentified flying object. But the way they're talking about it, well, you're going to see what the 1% that Hugh Ross believes is not a hoax. You'll find out what he thinks it is.
On the horizon that move around with it. The 1% residual, that really is what I would call a residual UFO or a real UFO. And these are phenomena that are non-physical but real. And so what I describe in our book is how we have scientific evidence that this is actually a real phenomenon. Now, one of the professors I had when I was at the University of Toronto was Carl Sagan, and his comment was, well, the UFOs they don't exist. But it's because his worldview would not permit the existence of non-physical reality. As a Christian, my worldview does. And here's the evidence. There's about 2,000 documented cases of the...
Hugh Ross, have you considered the possibility that Carl Sagan doesn't believe like you do because maybe he just doesn't see the evidence like you do and can think of other explanations that maybe you haven't thought of yet?
These UFOs.
And that it's not
like what we want to do, right? Except they're...
And that it's not a presupposition against miracles. That maybe it's basically that the evidence is not there, and maybe he is thinking about these things more critically than you are.
Move around with it. The 1% residual, that really is what I would call a residual UFO or a real UFO. And these are phenomena that are non-physical but real. And so what I describe in our book is how we have scientific evidence that this is actually a real phenomenon. Now, one of the professors I had when I was at the University of Toronto was Carl Sagan, and his comment was, well, the UFOs they don't exist. But it's because his worldview would not permit the existence of non-physical reality. As a Christian, my worldview does. And here's the evidence.
Okay, now I want you to watch the guy on the left in the plaid shirt. And he's a Christian. They're both Christians. All three of them are Christians. But you can see he's more skeptical than Hugh Ross is.
There's about 2,000 documented cases of these UFOs going through the atmosphere, very high velocity, and crashing into the Earth. And you go to the crash site, the snow is melted, the ground is depressed, the vegetation is damaged, but there's no artifacts at the site.
You know what he's describing? He's describing those crop circles, right? That you often see in the UK and in the Midwest in the United States. These flattened depressions in crops and...
No debris. If a plane crashes into the Earth, there's always debris there. In this case, nothing. And it was going through the atmosphere at 18,000 miles per hour, no sonic boom, and no heat friction as it went through the atmosphere. That would not be the case if it was a physical object. And so we're talking about something that clearly is real, because look at the damage, but it's non-physical because it's violating the laws of physics and is leaving no debris or artifacts as physical evidence.
Okay, now if you think you're a critical thinker, if you're listening to me right now in this video and you say, I am a critical thinker, what would you say in response to Hugh Ross here? He's describing a situation where people are having reports of seeing UFOs, and they go to the scene and they see depressions, burned vegetation, but no artifacts of UFOs or anything. And what would you ask at this point? Now, I'm curious to see if what you would ask is similar to what this Christian asks.
Okay, so what you've mentioned before and what you're saying right now is that those non-physical objects are coming to the sky. It's what people are seeing. If they're non-physical, and this is some type of demon UFO, if they're non-physical, how can people see them?
It's like such a simple question, but Hugh Ross has just eloquently said that there's a supernatural dimension that can have impacts on the physical ground and physical vegetation, and there's these reports of people seeing UFOs, but there's no traces. Well, if they're non-physical, how did people see them? And listen to Hugh Ross's answer here.
Of demon UFO, if they're non-physical, how can people see them?
Well, okay. God has created...
Well, okay.
Well, okay. God has created two different species of intelligent life. human beings, and we human beings are constrained.
So we're talking about unidentified flying objects, and the question is, how do you know that these things came through the atmosphere and landed if you can't see them, if they're supernatural? And what does he do? He quotes the Bible.
By the physics of the universe and the dimensions of the universe. But he created another species of intelligent life. He mentioned them, angels. Mm-hmm. These angels are not constrained by the physics of our universe. They have the power to come into a realm. They have the power to take on apparently physical form, but they can leave at will. They're not constrained by the physics of the universe. I mean, Hebrews 13:2 says, many of us have entertained angels unawares.
Oh, you know that verse? I got to tell a story.
Hebrews 13:2 says, many of us have entertained angels unawares.
Many of us have entertained angels unaware. I think it's singular, not plural. But anyhow, my dad is a staunch fundamentalist, conservative Christian. And when I was a kid growing up, my dad truly believed that as well, exactly what Hugh Ross is saying here. And I remember, I don't know how old I was, 7, 8 years old, and my dad picked up some guy who looked like he looked like the stereotypical serial killer type guy, all tattooed up and leather jacket and just, disheveled. And for some reason, my dad took him in to our home for a dinner, and then we talked afterwards. And I remember being scared. I was so terrified of this guy. And not only because of the way he looked, but because of the things he said. I remember this guy talking about him stabbing other people. So, at first, sure, stereotypes, but now this guy's telling us that he's stabbed other people in his life. And I just remember, I don't feel safe in my own home. Now, why would my dad do this? Because my dad later on told me that he thought that this guy was an angel, testing my father, to break those stereotypes, and that he's really an angel that people are unaware of, and that by giving him a dinner and, talking to him, that he might get some, brownie points from Yahweh. I don't know. But this is the danger. Now, thankfully, nothing happened, and the guy left. But this could have gone really bad, or just the fact that, I would never do that to my own children. Your home is a place where you should feel safe, and I did not feel safe. And this is 40 years ago. 40 years ago, and I still remember it. So that tells you how impactful that event was in my life. So anyhow, I digress. That verse reminded me of that.
They can take whatever physical form they choose. They can come as a leprechaun. They can come as a dirigible. They can come as a flying saucer. They can come as your dead grandfather. Whatever form they.
Now remember, the question that this very, I think, intelligent Christian asked was, well, if there's a report of a UFO flying through the atmosphere and landing in a field, but there's no evidence of it afterwards, how did the people even see them if these are non-physical supernatural forces? And Hugh Ross hasn't answered that question, just saying that they take different forms, so and then come in and out of existence. It's this is why people like me ask the Ferrari question. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that question, where I make the claim, I own a Ferrari. Now, how would you test that if that's actually true or not? And let's say I presented you keys for a Ferrari. Does me having keys for a Ferrari mean I own a Ferrari? No. If me taking you for a ride in a Ferrari, does that mean I own a Ferrari? No. I could have rented it. I could have just borrowed it from a friend. So you keep going down. If you're really trying to figure out what's true or not, I could even provide you with a title. But that could be a fake title, right? Now, this is the type of thinking that a guy like Hugh Ross should employ as a scientist if he's trying to falsify these claims or look for other explanations, hypotheses of what actually happened here. But what does he do? He goes straight to, oh, yeah, I can believe this because the Bible says that there's angels, there's demons, and so these things are possible. This is not how you think critically.
So choose, but they can also exit anytime they want from our physical realm. And that kind of defines the occult. The occult is referring to the phenomena of non-physical reality, and UFOs is one subset of that phenomena.
So UFOs are a subset of the occult.
Yeah, now that's one subset, like you said. I want to get into the occult a little bit more, discuss that more in depth. I'm not 100% sure.
Like you can see the doubt in this Christian's eyes here. Let me
a little bit more, discuss that more in depth. I'm not 100% sure. I guess I would, and this is be for further discussion, but I'm not sure how I feel about demons being able to take on corporeal form whenever they like to. But let's get into the occult now.
I'm sensing this Christian's just saying, I'm not buying what you're selling, Hugh.
I mean, you mentioned you got into this because people started asking you these questions. How do you know about the occult? So you started looking into UFOs because you're an astronomer. I get that. That makes sense. Why do you know about the occult? I mean, that's like a totally different category.
Okay, this is, I think, if I remember correctly, this is a very important part, what he says here.
Well, for example, with these UFOs, where they appear most common, and we're talking about the real ones, the most common appearance is 3 a.m. in the morning on lonely country roads.
3 a.m. in the morning on lonely country roads. A lot of personal spiritual experiences that people have, a lot of them happen at night too, when they're lonely.
We astronomers hang out at lonely country roads at 3 a.m. in the morning, more than any other part of the population. So you'd expect that astronomers would have the greatest number of encounters with these UFOs, but in fact it's one of the very lowest. Now
Okay, so he's saying here, astronomers, out of all the people on this planet, they're out in the middle of the night on lonely roads looking at things, and you would expect out of all the people in the world, astronomers would be seeing UFOs. But that's not the case. Why is that? Because maybe some of these scientists have pretty good critical reasoning skills. And maybe a lot of them are, stable.
Saw when I was active doing astronomical research is that there were two astronomers that I knew every time they came on the telescope, they saw UFOs. And their observing load was 3 or 4 hours per year. There were 3 of us graduate students.
So the two astronomers that he knows of that did see UFOs, they're involved in the occult.
And so we're logging 1,500 hours per year. We never saw a thing. But I knew those two astronomers that were having consistent encounters were deep into the occult. And because of their occult involvement, they opened the door for these demons appearing as UFOs to come into their life.
So they opened the door to this idea of UFOs, and that's why they saw them. Now, what's more likely to you, Hugh Ross, that all these scientists who are not involved in the occult, they don't have this type of imagination of demons and angels and so forth? What's more likely that maybe that those people who do have this imagination for demons and angels, that they actually conjure up and see what they want to see, that their mind plays tricks on them? They truly, truly believe in demons and angels, and then they look at the night sky and they see something and they immediately think, oh, what I saw must be outside this world.
And since the 3 of us graduate students were not involved in the occult,
outside this natural world,
and had no occult encounters, we were not seeing anything. And so from that point onward, I put that correlation to the test. So, for example, when I spoke in the Soviet Union in the late 1980s and early 1990s, when they're being still ruled by the communists, I was invited there actually by the Soviet lab to address physicists and chemists and other scientists with PhDs. And what I noticed is how many of them were deeply involved in the occult.
Well, wait a minute. He's describing communism and they're deeply involved in the occult? I thought those communists were all atheists. But you're telling me that they now believe in demons?
And consequently, we're having frequent UFO encounters. And so there's a correlation there. The greater the involvement of the occult, the more the UFO encounters.
Oh, I got it. Listen to that correlation.
In there, we're having frequent UFO encounters. And so there's a correlation there. The greater the involvement of the occult, the more the UFO encounters.
The more the UFO encounters. Maybe there's a similar correlation to personal spiritual experiences. The deeper the belief in a supernatural realm and a Holy Spirit, the more likely you are to experience that. But yet maybe none of that is real. And I don't know how Hugh Ross can't see this, that there's a more likely explanation for these phenomena, people seeing things, experiencing things that could be based entirely in their psychology, in their culture, their experiences from a younger age, and so forth, that you're more apt to see and believe things that you have been conditioned to believe and see. Like the fact that Hugh Ross admits that the vast majority of astronomers have not seen or experienced any supernatural type UFOs. Remember, Hugh Ross is defining UFO as not of this natural world. Should tell you that maybe the likely explanation here is that the people who do have come with this preconceived idea that these things exist, and just like you see shapes in clouds, they're seeing things in the night.
And so for North Africa and France and Soviet Russia, much higher percentage of the population is having these encounters than, say, the United States.
That makes sense. Now, the interest in the occult is not limited to just Russian scientists. I mean, we're talking...
Okay, I want to fast forward it to a part where, like, I think it just shows Hugh Ross's lack of critical reasoning skills. It's about a haunted house.
We, my wife and I have kind of a policy that our kids, we have a lot of kids, and they just don't spend the night at other people's houses. This isn't the only reason by any, or even the main reason, but it certainly is one of the reasons. It just comes back to, you never really know what's going to happen when your kids spend the night at someone's house, for sure. But that's really interesting to hear that. That's where most of these students got involved in some of those things. You mentioned the Ouija board was one of them. What are some of these other things that people get involved with that they probably don't even realize are occult?
So just prior to this, they were talking about how these demons can get a foothold, how they can enter one's life. I tell you, I don't know how high it is, but I remember seeing some stats. My guess is in the United States, close to half of the population believe that ghosts and demons and angels are real. It's probably more than half. And that they can actually get a foothold, that by clicking a certain link on your computer, by playing certain video games, by playing with Ouija boards, that you give permission for these demons to enter your life and affect you.
Occult materials.
It's interesting about the college men. Then the number one way they got exposed was through occult video games. And so just watching what kind of video games you engage in can be a factor.
Yeah.
Now, I've also...
My wife probably won't let me do this, but I'd love to buy a Ouija board. And the thing was with Ouija boards, people always have their hands on them, right? Moving it around. I would love to just put it on the Ouija board, the thingy, and just, okay, move on your own. Let's see you do it. Have the cameras going, 3 cameras going. I think people have done this before and nothing happens.
Also seen things which are much more innocent. So, for example, there was a couple in our church. I mean, I'm not just an astronomer. I'm also a pastor like you guys.
Yes.
And so I got a call from a couple and said, we just bought this home, and there's a room that's 10 degrees colder than all the other rooms, and there's knives and forks floating in midair in this room.
Okay, so he gets a call from people in his church claiming that the room is 10 degrees colder than the other rooms and that there's knives and forks. Did he say what kind of room it is?
A couple and said, we just bought this home, and there's a room that's 10 degrees colder than all the other rooms, and there's knives and forks floating in midair in this room.
Okay. Hugh Ross, did you believe them? Did you believe them right away when they said this? I hope you didn't. If you call yourself a scientist, I hope you had at least a little bit of skepticism that this is maybe not true. I tell you, if my wife or one of my closest friends made the same claim, I'd listen to them, but I'm not going to assume that what they're describing to me actually happened. I'm not. Sorry. Sorry, Camp Spires. Sorry, Reed. Nice Wonder. Sorry, Chet. Sorry, Leon. I'm not going to believe you right away until I see some evidence, because you could be going through an episode.
And so they were concerned that there was a demon that was causing all this. I said, well, there has to be some article left behind by the previous owner.
There has to be an article left by the previous owner, he says. Hugh Ross, where does it say that in the Bible? That demons leave behind articles, or that owners leave behind articles that, like, where does he get this from? Did he watch, what is that movie called, that all those paranormal horror movies? Poltergeist? Did you get this from Poltergeist, Hugh Ross? Or did you get this from the Conjuring movie?
You need to find that article and destroy it. They said, well, we've already done that. We spent 2 days searching the house. We can't find anything.
Oh, these Christians already did that. They already searched the house for articles left by the previous owner. And when you say destroyed, I'm assuming it has to be burned, right? Because that's what was in the Poltergeist movie or the Conjuring movie, whatever.
They said, well, wait a minute. How about if I just come over, we pray and ask the Lord to help us find? So there's got to be something, because I knew their life was...
So you're praying to God to help you find this leftover article. Why don't you just pray to God to remove the demon?
Clean. So there's got to be something done by the previous owner. And so went over to the house. We prayed for 15 minutes. And I said, what about the attic? I said, we searched that. I said, what about under the house? The basement took care of that. I said, what about the garage? They said, we've taken care of that. I said, let's go into the room. So I went into the room, and what I noticed was that there was a faint octagonal outline on one of the walls. And then I scratched a little bit of the paint. I asked them if I could do that, and discovered that the room was painted over. And the paint color underneath was midnight blue. He said, are you aware that midnight blue is a favored color for seances?
Are you aware that midnight blue... Wait a minute. My background is sort of a midnight blue on the edges. Oh, no. Are you aware that midnight blue is the color for seances? Is that in the Bible, too? Where do you get this from? How can someone call themselves a scientist who respects evidence, the scientific method, pulling these things out of the hat, articles of clothing or whatever left over by the previous owner, midnight blue is the color of seances, demons come in through Ouija boards. You know, Hugh, you know what would have been a good start, Dr. Hugh Ross? If you would have brought some thermometers, some digital thermometer gauges, and a video recorder showing that one room is indeed 10 degrees cooler than the others. And then even then, you could probably come up with explanations why that might be, right? Other than demons?
I said, no.
And if you could see through the paint this hexagon shape, why didn't the owners, the couple in your church, why couldn't they see it? Do you have X-ray vision, Hugh Ross? Do you think maybe that it's true that there was a hexagonal shape painted over, and that the owners of the house actually saw it and immediately jumped to, our house is possessed, and then they called you?
I said, we need to find what this octagonal thing was. It was about 3 feet in diameter. So I said, let's go into the garage. And they said, we've already searched that. So I said, let's go there anyway. And I said, there's a whole bunch of lumber on the rafters up there. And they said, have you been through that? And they said, no, we haven't. It's just lumber. And I said, let's haul all the lumber down. We hauled all the lumber down, and we found an octagonal shape after what we had on the wall. We destroyed it. The room returned to normal.
And what was it again? You broke up a little bit.
He destroyed some octagonal boards, the attic? I don't know what he said. He broke up. But he destroyed it, and then everything returned to normal? Boy, that would have been cool if you would have had thermometer gauges there to show that the temperature immediately rose 10 degrees.
But there.
Yeah, it was an astrological forecasting device.
Wow. Okay.
So we destroyed that. The temperature of the room went back to normal, and there was no more floating spoons and forks.
No more floating... Were there floating spoons and forks in this room when you walked into it, Hugh Ross? Oh, my goodness. And you know what's interesting is guys like Michael Lacona PhDs in history believe this sort of stuff too. The anecdotal evidence that people have told him that trash cans have been flying in the air, and he just said, "Oh, yeah, I believe you."
Okay, I got questions about this experience on the other side of this break. Right now, we got to go to break. So
I like this guy. If you ever see that I used your video here, I like you. You seem like there's some good critical thinking skills, because this guy seems doubtful. But anyhow, that's Hugh Ross in a nutshell. I think if I was to psychoanalyze Hugh Ross, something happened in his teens, and he uses science to not feel stupid for what he believes, to say that he has some type of good reason to believe what he believes. And again, there could be a God that started the universe. Yeah, sure. But nothing in his video says that using science alone, you can say you must go from atheism to deism. Remember, he used the word must, I think, twice. That using science alone, you must go from atheism to deism. And that he basically used scripture to show you could go to deism to theism, and use his own scriptures to go from theism to Christianity. There's a lot of religions in the world, Hugh Ross, who also believe in a creator God, but don't think it's Christianity. And some even believe in a personal God and don't think it's Christianity. So I think you would just say that those religions don't make sense, right? That they just, when you read their holy books, they don't make sense. But when you read yours, it does. Yeah, that's what typically happens. That was fun. I'm just reading some of the comments here. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I do this for my own entertainment. My laughs are sincere. But I do want to apologize to Hugh Ross. He was scheduled to come on and defend himself, but we ran out of time. So my apologies to Hugh Ross. My apologies to Rob Rowe. He's a Hugh Ross fan, and he probably hates me now. Thank you, DB Cisco. DB Cisco just donated the Satan number to me, but I'll be okay. I'll be just fine. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you next time.